One of the most characteristic things about this Torah portion, Vayera, of this week, is that it contains a number of angels who visit on this week's story. One angel comes to visit Abraham as he's healing from his Brit Milah. Another one comes to announce to Abraham and Sarah that they will have a child, indeed, at this very advanced age. Angel who brings good news. One brings healing, the other one brings good news. Another one yet is the one that announces the destructions of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then at the end of the parasha, there's another very important angel who comes to hold Abraham back from going through with the sacrifice of his son Yitzchak. If it weren't for that angel, we wouldn't be here. Because we are descendants of Abraham and Yitzchak, and if Yitzchak would have been sacrificed, there would have been no Jewish people. So it's a very significant angel. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel tells a story that he remembered of he was a little child studying this Torah portion and this particular moment in the story of the binding of Isaac, of the Akedah, in Cheder, in the school, with his teacher. And this is what he writes. Here is the experience of a child of 7 who was reading in school the chapter which tells of the sacrifice of Isaac on the way to Mount Moriah with his father Abraham. He lay on the altar, bound, waiting to be sacrificed. My heart began to beat even faster. It actually sobbed with pity for Isaac. Behold, Abraham now lifted the knife, and now my heart froze within me with fright. Suddenly the voice of the angel was heard, Abraham, lay not your hand upon the boy, for now I know that you fear God. And here I broke out in tears and wept aloud. Why are you crying? Asked the teacher. You know that Isaac was not killed. And I said to him, still weeping, but Rabbi, supposing the angel had come a second too late? The rabbi comforted me and calmed me by telling me that an angel cannot come late. But I do believe angels actually do come late. And sometimes they never come. The angels didn't come when 1,400 people were murdered after being tortured and maimed and raped. The angels didn't show up when 242 people were taken hostage into Gaza. The angel didn't come when Palestinian civilians were killed over the last 4 weeks. The angel didn't come in the last 2 or 3 days when Israeli soldiers and officers were killed in action in Gaza. No, they didn't come. Where are you? Angels, angels of comfort, we will sing to you, Malachi Rachamim, Malachi Shalom, the angels of compassion, the angels of peace. Where are you, angels of comfort, angels of healing, angels of life, angels of light? Do not delay anymore. Take us out of this darkness and this mess of death and war.
After October 7th occurred, Governor Hochul made a decision right away that she would make a trip to Israel, which she did. And she arrived in Israel and spent several days there. And upon entering the hotel, she heard the news that her father had died. And the last message that I read that he said to her on her voicemail was, "I'm proud of you, Dolly, but keep your goddamn head down." But we've been very proud that your head has not been down. Your head has been up for the Jewish people in these last 4 weeks. You made your way to Israel to be of comfort and support and stand in solidarity with the Jewish people. You made your way to Cornell when terrible anti-Semitism, vicious and vile words of threat were sent to the Jewish students, and you made your way in solidarity to say, not in my state, not on this campus, not on any college campus. And you've made your way here tonight because last Shabbat you were in Florida to hopefully receive some angels of comfort in your time of mourning, to now make your way to our community, to once again stand with us as a community in our time of sorrow and need. And we are deeply moved by all the steps you've taken in these last 4 weeks to show up for what is right and good and just, and to also imagine that not only in our state, but all across the world, and particularly what's needed now in Israel, is peace and justice and goodness. And so we are very, very honored that you're here with us tonight. Governor Hochul, the 57th governor of New York State, and the first woman governor of New York State, who's been a steadfast supporter of the Jewish community in Israel. On behalf of myself, Rabbi Roli Matalan, Chazan Ari Privin, and Rabbi Becca Weintraub, and all our community who has gathered here tonight and who's joining us on the live stream, welcome, welcome. I know you come in peace and in solidarity, and hopefully the next time you come, it will be for peace.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Not sure this is going to work for me, but I'll try it this way. No? I'm good. Thank you. Rabbi Matalan, Rabbi Felice, Cantor, friends, it's hard to stand here and recount what I've witnessed over the last 4 weeks, but I feel compelled to do so. So in my telling of what I saw, I hope it doesn't reopen wounds that may be starting to heal. But I went to Israel for one reason, and that was to bear witness with my own eyes in my own ears, in my own nose, of what the Israeli people endured on October 7th, because there were already deniers out there. Not unlike the Holocaust deniers, which still exist today. So I said I need to see and bear witness. I didn't go on that journey alone. I went with some incredibly brave staff. And I want to acknowledge them here tonight because we became soulmates on this journey, forever bound by the travesty of what we saw, but also the reservoir of hope that we thought we could bring perhaps to others half a world away. I want to shout out to Michael Lasher. Thank you for being there, literally at my side when I found out I lost my father when we landed. Thank you, Micah. I want to thank Eva Weimer, a young woman who was so tenacious, made all the magic happen, made sure everything worked out well. Avi Small, my press secretary, who had to deal with a lot of questions. And Jake Adler went with me as well. I just want to thank them because I don't think they get enough credit for what they do. But I will tell you what I saw. I landed just as President Biden was leaving. And I'll tell you that the people of Israel felt so much more seen and acknowledged and understood, and were hugging me because of what President Biden had told them. He brought them hope. And me being able to continue on and bring some hope to people that, yes, I can only speak for the great state of New York, but I do represent the largest population of Jews outside of Israel, and I brag about that all the time. Yeah. So I wanted them to know that I too stood with Israel. But I had messages just like the president did for the leadership. That when I did meet the Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I met President Herzog, I met Ambassador Herzog, I met the foreign minister, we met everyone. I said, we have an undying commitment to your right to be free, to exist, and also to protect yourself. And do whatever you can to make sure there's humanitarian aid for everyone, and that there's a limit to the loss of innocent life. But you do have a right to protect yourself, just as we did after 9/11. You have a right to stand up to terrorists. But we arrived, what we saw the first night was a makeshift camp at a hotel. It was the people had been displaced from a kibbutz that had been obliterated. There were children and dogs and cats running around the yard. It was late at night. Kids on bicycles. It was almost surreal. But what brought you back to reality was standing in the lobby of the hotel and seeing a white eraser board with all these marks and names and checks on it. I said, "What's that?" They said, "That's the list for the funerals of the day, the people who died." And people were sitting Shiva in different rooms, people mourning. But life was still going on amongst them. And I went into a room that was just filled with supplies and diapers and baby food and carriages and sneakers of all sizes for this family, the families who found their way there. They had nothing. They literally fled their homes with the clothes they had on their backs. So the community came forth to help them, but then I went into another room. People sitting in a semicircle. These were the families from Kfar Aza. The first person I spoke to was a young man, attractive young man, tall. He had the courage to tell me that his 4-year-old, his 8-year-old, his 10-year-old, and his wife were all kidnapped that day. And also their 4-year-old's friend down the street, whose both parents were killed in front of him, found his way to their house, and they also took that 4-year-old. Another man, probably about my age, was telling me he had been in San Francisco. Why San Francisco? I said he was going to greet his first grandbaby. I have a new grandbaby. I know what it feels like. His wife wasn't ill. She couldn't go on the journey. His wife and son were found in an embrace, being slaughtered on October 7th. There was others who had families that were missing. That was late at night after we'd traveled through the evening, and I knew the next day was going to be harder because we were going to travel to the very site 1 mile in from Gaza, the first American, definitely the first elected official to go into that war zone. It was an armored vehicle. My staff were told their vehicle was not armored. And I said, well, what's supposed to happen to them? Well, they're supposed to pull over on the side of the road and go into a ditch, and I'm supposed to stay in my vehicle. I said, that's not happening. We'll find room in my vehicle for the 4 of them. I'm not going back without them. They have parents too. We went down there, and I pray that my team can recover from the images. I worry about them, because I don't know if I will. We were escorted by the foreign minister, surrounded by military. We had the flak jests on, and we were all ready for anything. And we could see the smoke off in the distance. You could hear the gunfire. Going into a village that had been just crumbled. The buildings collapsed. Cars in such contortion. They've been bombed or mowed over by a tank. Something happened. The rubble was everywhere. It looked like just buildings collapsed. So we went inside these little homes. And this is, remember, and I'm old enough to remember the hippies. These would have been our hippies. These were the peace-loving people, right? They kind of step away from society. They want to commune together. They want to raise their kids in peace and freedom, talk about values. And indeed, this very village, this kibbutz, they were the ones that were raising money to send over to Gaza to help people. One woman told me her sister was kidnapped. She was in charge of that. That was her job every week. She collected money to send over to Gaza. Went into one home, and I was told of the tradition they had. After Sukkot, everybody gathers, family celebrates, joyous occasion. This one family, every single year at 4 o'clock, on the day of celebration, would fly these colorful kites into Gaza, across the border, as a sign of peace, that we're here for you. Share something beautiful together. We walked into that home. 4 o'clock for that family never came to fly their kites. Their entire family was murdered. We saw the blood on the bed, on the walls, on the floor. And I saw the blood, the pool of blood on top of the kites on the floor that were never flown. I'll never lose that image. There were more. Sat with the hostage families, the American families, American hostages. And why that's not talked about every single day, I'll never know. Because I remember 440 days of the Americans held captive in Iran. It was the first story on the news every night for a year and a half. Why aren't we talking about the hostages? Certainly the Israeli hostages, but there's people from 25 countries, including our own state. And I'm so offended that that has become sort of a secondary story, something that's not talked about anymore. But I sat with their families, and I was given the photo of Omar Nutra from his aunts and uncles. I had met his parents at a rally the week before here in New York. Long Island resident. I put his photo in the hands of the president of the country. Said, I have to speak up for these people, because who else will do that? So we met the leaders, we went to hospitals. In the hospitals, I saw the living, and that felt better. The survivors, the people who had survived what happened at that concert when young people just gathered to dance and be carefree. Young soldier, 19 years old, he looked like a little kid, telling me how he killed 4 of the terrorists. He was trying to save people, and he did, but he's almost mortally wounded. Another young man, they thought he was dead. They brought him there and they kept him on life support, but they just kept him on life support long enough to let his very pregnant wife journey up so she could deliver the baby in the same hospital where her husband died. Except he lived. He lived. I got a chance to talk to him, showed me pictures of the new baby. There were some beautiful images of resiliency and love and the hope I felt from talking to the families of the hostages who believe in their hearts they're going to see them again, to those that do believe there's still a chance for peace in this world. What I took from the people of Israel strengthened my resolve. And they gave me comfort because word was now out after I went to the wall and put a little note about praying for the people of Israel, but also my dad, who I just found out that morning. They comforted me. And everyone says, how did you endure finding out the loss here? My father wasn't even sick. The doctor that day said, you're going to live longer than all of us. And yet the next day he was gone. But I think there were some angels involved. The angels were the people of Israel. When I needed help, they embraced me. They're coming up to me on the street and embracing me because my story was out. I came to give them comfort and they gave me comfort. It was the most beautiful experience. It helped me recover quickly. It also put life into perspective. You can expect to lose an 87-year-old father at some point, but you don't expect to lose your baby, your children, your young wife. But coming back here has been hard because there should be this sense of support and care. Talk about what happened to 1,400 beautiful souls who are no longer with us and the hostages. And that's not what we're hearing, except in places like this. Maybe at your dinner table, maybe at your gatherings, but it's not the story out there in the country and not even in New York. New York, the place that's built on diversity, and we celebrate diversity. We say, come from all over the world because we'll accept you, we love you. It makes us so fascinating. And yet I'm not seeing that here today. And I know there's a sense of betrayal because for every movement that mattered, the Jewish people were at the forefront. The civil rights movement back in the 60s, LGBTQ movement, women's rights movement. When Asians are being attacked during the pandemic, the Jewish community stood up with them. They stood up with Muslims after 9/11 and said, no, it wasn't them. George Floyd, they marched together. Where is the support for the people of your faith right now when you need it the most? I'm calling that out as well because I'm offended by that. And when I see the rise in anti-Semitism at a time when there should be more love coming your way, I'll call that out as well. And I'll go to a place like Cornell early on a Monday morning. Literally came back from burying my father on Sunday night. And I got the message that there were horrible messages, and I read them and they sickened me to my stomach. I was just appalled by what these young kids on a college campus in our state had to read and had to fear now that someone would slit their throat when they were going to a class. I called up the president late at night and I said, I'm coming to have breakfast with you and those kids because I'm a mom. I need to let those kids know we're going to take care of them and their parents. So we gathered in the Center for Jewish Life, about 25 of them. They were so grateful I came. For me, it's showing up. I mean, life is just showing up. But for them, it was a symbol that there were people listening to them. And I left the state police out there, and it turned out the state police captain was Jewish himself. He had family in Israel. He sat there and said, I'll take care of you when I left because he also understood what it felt like. So this rise in anti-Semitism, it's evil, it's abhorrent, and people out anywhere you can disagree with Israel's response to the attack by terrorists. I happen to think it's justified, but if someone disagrees, you can be opposed to that. But you could also be opposed to terrorism. You could also be opposed to Hamas. You could also be opposed to hate crime and speech. And also be opposed to those who are so depraved and cruel of heart that they would tear down the picture of an American hostage reopening the wound in their parents' heart. Have we really come to this? I say no. No, we're not. No, we are never going to be that way. Because when that day happens, our moral compass has spun out of control and it's broken, and I will not stand for that. So I'm here for you. I am here for you. And I thank our elected officials who are also standing up. Congressman Jerry Nadler, what he is seeing and having to experience. Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal, who's joined us. Councilmember Gail Brewer. Do I see Brad Hoylman here? Senator Brad Hoylman here. These people are your defenders as well. But mark my words, I will make sure that anyone who crosses the line and creates fear in the hearts of others, like that perpetrator on the Cornell campus who I promised the kids we would find, he is now facing federal charges. We need to talk about consequences to your hate, because no one has a right to make someone else feel diminished or hurt by their words or their actions. I did see a lot of glimmers of hope in Israel. That's what I want to leave you with. We'll continue to pray for them. Pray for all of us. I believe we continue to listen to the Word of God, to inspire us, to lift us up. I do believe that those angels will come, Rabbi. The angels will come for us. Thank you very much for listening.